Welcome back to ShePropTalk. I am Beverly, your host, and today's guest is the incredible, multi-talented designer and maker, Sophy Wong. Hi, Sophie.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you. I've been looking forward to this ever since I've been following you. I've got to get her on. I want to pick her brain.
Oh my
She's
gosh.
amazing. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And today we're going to be talking about wearable tech and some of your other projects. But before we get launched into all of that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the things that you make?
Yeah, so I'm a designer and a maker. My background is actually in graphic design. So I have a degree, I have a BFA in graphic design, but I was really fortunate in my design education that my professors and my teachers, they approached design very holistically. So they taught it as a framework that can be applied to anything. So that's really what I do. I use my design thinking brain to just tackle projects that really anything I want to build. So I'm often learning new things on projects, and I've just collected a whole bunch of different skills and tools and approaches to things. So my interest is in wearable projects. I love fashion and costuming, and I also really love technology, and I didn't know that I could incorporate those two things together for quite a while. But when I realized that those two things can go together, I really just fell in love with wearable tech. So a lot of my projects have technology either in the finished project, like they light up or they move, or sometimes the projects have technology just built into the process. So I use I use my 3D printer a lot, my laser cutter, and I have a desktop CNC machine that I'm learning how to use. So yeah, whether it's technology as actually part of the finished project or technology as part of the process, I just really like to incorporate that and explore that in my work.
Wow, that is amazing. That you answered my next question, which was how did you get started with designing wearable tech and this whole process? Because your projects are they're so expansive. You have done so many little things that I feel like I would be a kid in a candy shop walking around your shop and looking at all the projects and the different things that you have done. But what was that first project that made you realize that you could do these amazing projects? Sounds like you might have fallen in love all at once, like it was a light bulb going off.
Definitely. Yeah, I actually remember I remember my first moment realizing that these things could be done. And that was when I was watching, I think it was the second season of Project Runway. There was a designer on the show who did a lot of wearable tech projects. Her name is Diana Ng, and she did things like putting a heart rate sensor in the sleeve of the garment, and then a camera in the hood, so it could detect when your heart rate sped up, and then it would take a picture. And her concept was well, it's capturing whatever experience was happening to you that made your pulse race. And I saw her work, and she wasn't on the show for very long. She didn't win the show. She didn't make it all the way to the end, but I didn't need to see her win. I just needed to see that these things could be done. Wow. And I was just blown away. So I looked her up. She wrote a book. I bought her book, and I started just exploring. Through her book, I found resources, the places that I could buy these components. And I did the projects in her book to learn just the basics of how you would build anything. I actually pulled out my first wearable electronics project, which was this. Wow. It's a sweater, and you can see it's not very sophisticated or very well thought out even. I didn't really think about what I was going to do with this battery. It's just kind of dangling. It's not a good idea. It's also not insulated from my skin, so that's also not a
Oh,
good idea. But that's
oh,
okay because what happened was I turned it on, and it's going to be so dim. I'm not even sure you can see it,
oh
but they're
yeah, no, I can see
blinking.
it.
And when
Oh,
I
that's
got
so
to the
cool.
point where this was working, I mean, this is a sewn circuit. This is my first circuit I ever built. And it worked, and that was enough. I mean, I was hooked. I was like, oh my goodness, what else can I do with this? This is very simple. This is a great first project, you know? And once I got to this point, I was like, well, those floodgates are open. Um, and so really, my entry point into electronics at all was wearable electronics and specifically sewn circuits. Conductive thread is easier to pick up and just start using than
Hmm.
to get into soldering right away.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then I just dreamed bigger and bigger, and I wanted to build. I mean, my imagination got wild really fast, and the technique of sewing circuits couldn't really keep up with that, and so that forced me to learn how to solder. So then I hit this next level, and then I started building more complex things, and always always finding ways to integrate electronics into the things that I wanted to build. And I think what really helped me was falling in love with the thing that I wanted to make at the beginning of my process,
Hmm.
because it's difficult. There's so
Hmm.
much to learn, especially
Hmm.
if you're coming to it without an engineering background,
Hmm.
um, that I needed to be like obsessed with the thing that I wanted to get at the end of it to make it through all of the hurdles.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, that
yeah.
sounds a lot like cosplay and foam crafting and all of that. That's amazing. And you are talking about a lot of things that I think prevent some folks from picking up, putting LEDs and things, or maybe it's a little bit intimidating. Certainly, and I'm speaking from experience. I have dabbled a little bit in adding LEDs and things like that to my projects, but the idea of soldering was very scary. I was afraid of getting burned. I was afraid of electricity shocking myself,
Yeah.
all those things. And so I think that if I had known about the sewable circuits, I probably would have uh, built up a little bit of a trust in myself and also in the process and learning.
Yeah,
So that sounds like a great place to start if someone is thinking about it and a little bit intimidated by the bigger process of it.
definitely.
But yeah, interesting.
Definitely. And I think too, there's like different ways to select your first wearable electronics projects.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for some people, like me, I I need to bite off more than I can chew because that really keeps me engaged.
Mm-hmm.
But for other people, it can be too frustrating, and it can be an even bigger hurdle if you don't feel success early on. So I think like there are kind of two approaches that I observe that work for different people in different ways. Like if you have a project that you already want to build and it will require you to do electronics at some point, um, and it's sort of like a small piece of this bigger project that you want to build, my advice would be to accomplish that in the simplest way possible. Um, and that might just be putting a strand of fairy lights that has a battery pack already attached,
Mm-hmm.
somehow figuring out how to put that into your project,
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to learn a lot of things that are going to translate into bigger projects later with those first
Mm-hmm.
smaller projects. Because you're still going to have to sort out how you're going to distribute that circuit on your body, where you're going to place the battery pack so you can get to it and change the battery. You're going to have to make sure you can turn it on and off. You're going to have to make sure you don't damage the circuit and snag it. Those are all things that you're going to encounter even
Mm-hmm.
if you're just putting fairy lights into a prop or
Mm-hmm.
into your clothes. And
Yeah.
that's going to serve you when later on you feel more comfortable and you want to learn how to build more complexity into your circuit with something custom.
Yeah.
Um, that I think that works really well for a lot of people, and
Mm-hmm.
I do projects like that as well. I mean, introducing complexity into your project when it doesn't need to be there, sometimes it's great because it gives you the opportunity to learn something, but sometimes it's a block, and it might be more important for you to have some success, you know? Mm-hmm. So I stumbled a lot. In fact, the moment when I realized I needed to learn how to solder, I was working on my Jawa costume, and that's like from Star Wars with the light up eyes. Yeah, and I was building the mask, and I was trying to do these light up eyes with conductive thread. I was trying to use the technique that I had already learned, sewing a circuit. And it turns out that is a lot of complexity, more complexity than I realized. I thought, I'm just going to light up these two LEDs. But weaving those circuits around each other on that mask that had to go on my head, and separating the circuit lines and making sure they didn't short each other out, it was just too much complexity for a sewn circuit to handle in the application I was trying to use it in. And I tried multiple times to do it with a sewn circuit, and it was days and days of frustration. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I have to rip this all out because it's not working. And not only do I have to rip this out, but I have to learn a whole new skill. So
how did you realize that? How did you come to the new solution, the solution that did work for you?
Well, I started to do some research. I had to learn more about the material that I was using. So conductive thread it's conductive, but it is not insulated. So insulation is, the plastic coating or the silicone coating on wiring is what keeps those wires from touching each other and shorting out in your circuit. And conductive thread does not have that. It is just bare conductive material. And so you need to keep those circuit lines from crossing each other, either by spacing them out in your design or by applying some insulation material over the top of them. And I was trying to accomplish this. I understood this concept, but I was trying to accomplish it by adding fabric in between lines of conductive thread, and it was getting more and more complex. And the problem is that fabric is flexible, so you might have you might have your lines separated here, but then while you're wearing your fabric, it's going to fold and those lines are going to touch. So you kind of have to take into account the wearability of your circuit and what's going to happen to it as you move and flex your body. And that's another thing that is a huge concept that you're going to encounter early on with wearable technology and wearable electronics, that things just shift. And you know, as a cosplayer, right? You know where you put things on your body when you get dressed, and 4 hours into it, that thing has slid, or it's chafing, or the amount of
paint
stress
on it anymore. Yeah,
exactly. And you have you can design it with the best intentions and all of the knowledge that you've accumulated over all of the projects you've done, but the amount of wear and tear that our clothes go through and everything on our body goes through, it adds up. So I had to learn a lot more about the material I was using and the technique I was using, and the limitations of it. And I was aware of soldering, and I had been putting it off because I was afraid. I was new to it, and honestly, it's so fun. Soldering is so fun. And now that I know how to do it, I love soldering.
Well, that gives me a lot of hope, Sophie.
Yeah, no, it's like, you're using these heat tools, and for a crafter or a sewer or someone who's already used to using machines in your work, I think there's a misconception that it's something new to you. It's not. You're used to your iron. You know how to work with heat tools. It's I think it's the idea of electricity being involved. It's a new world, and yes, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of technique to be learned. But it's not so different from the other machines that you're already using in your work, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it's another thing is like 3D printing. The more 3D printing I do and the more sewing I do, the more I realize that these things are so connected. And, when I have to re-level my 3D printer or take something apart on it and fix it, it always reminds me of when I have to, rip all the thread out of my sewing machine and re-thread it or oil it or maintain it somehow. It's like we have these skills.
Yeah. Well, that is a really refreshing and wonderful way to look at it that I had never really considered. So, I hope that the people that are watching and listening are also hearing these very wise words of encouragement, because it can be a little bit scary. And I have books, I've watched tutorials, but I think I need to probably do some projects where I might have some guidance. And actually that brings me to a book that you wrote about this very subject. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I've been writing tutorials for a magazine called Hackspace. They're a UK-based magazine. They're put out by Raspberry Pi Press. And I started writing tutorials for their magazine, and eventually they said, we want to compile your tutorials and maybe add some more and publish a book, essentially, that is all about wearable technology.
So cool.
And so it's actually, I have one. I brought it out. So it's this book.
Awesome.
And it's basically like like a special issue of the magazine. It's about the same amount of content, but
That's
it's
a lot of pages, Sophie.
It's a
wow.
lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot of different projects. And it's not just me in here. I think the tutorials most of the tutorials are my tutorials, but there are also other artists in here who just do amazingly inspiring wearable tech work. And so even if you just want to find out what can be done, this is kind of a nice survey. And the projects in it really range from very simple, no coding, to more complex with coding. There's scratch coding projects in here, which is not scratch, excuse me, make code. Make code projects use a visual-based coding platform, so you don't need to know programming to customize your project. And then there are projects in here that are more that are a little bit more robust in terms of coding. So it's a wide range. And it's also available for free. So you can buy this hard copy if you want to. It's a lovely hard copy, but you can also download the whole thing as a free PDF.
Wow.
So yeah, and I love that Hackspace does that for all their magazine issues. You can always just download it. So yeah, it's a good thing to check out if you want to get started and even just get some ideas about what can be done.
Definitely going to check that out. I think a lot of the projects that have been my favorites that I've seen on your website and your social media, I saw on the cover of that, and I saw in some of the photos that you've shared of that media. I did go to the website and I downloaded it to check it out.
Good.
And I really want to look through it, because you are such an amazing educator. You've done so much of that I feel like I'll be in very good hands with learning how to.
It makes me really happy.
Yeah,
it makes me happy just to see people taking these projects and doing their own versions of them. And so show me what you make. I really want to see it.
Oh my gosh,
and
I will.
Reach out. I have a lot of people that do reach out to me. They have questions about the project. They're working through it and they have questions, and I'm just happy to help. I just want to see what other people do and take it and make it. It makes me so happy.
That's so great. I feel like you were inspired to start in this direction, and now by someone who was using this, and you bought their book, and now you are doing the same thing. You're making things, and you're making that process available to other people, and you're providing the support on the other side. So thank you for being so wonderful about that.
Oh my gosh.
Great.
my pleasure. Every day. It makes me so happy.
Awesome. All right. So let's start talking about some of your projects.
Yeah.
So I know you have so many things that I would love to talk about, but let's focus on just a few so we can make the most of our time together. I can see it behind you. There's a space suit right behind you. Can you tell me about that? And I know that off camera you have something very cool too. So let's talk about it.
So this was something that so it's an original design. It's something that I just wanted to make for myself. And so it's kind of a design exercise. And for me, I love cosplay, but an aspect of cosplay that I love is inserting my design process into it. So this project was just like so fun for me because I got to decide what it looked like, where the lines were going to go, what the right materials were, and what the story was that I was trying to convey with it. So it's kind of inspired by multiple of things. It's cinematic spacesuits, so not really real spacesuits, but fantasy spacesuits like Aliens and The Expanse.
Love
and
it.
I just looked at all of those images for inspiration, and I picked, the elements that I thought would work, that I liked best, and I actually I didn't start with the suit. I started with the helmet, and that's what I'm gonna show you. This is the helmet. This is actually a costume helmet that I bought as the base of this helmet. And the whole thing is painted and covered in foam that I cut on my laser cutter.
Oh my gosh.
I basically looked, I should have grabbed the original helmet. The original helmet is just white and orange and blue, and the visor opens and closes. And I searched around online for a helmet that that had a good shape, that I thought I could kind of obscure the original look of the helmet, something that I thought could really support my own ideas but have a good base shape. So that's what I ended up getting. And this helmet has a blue visor, and I couldn't change that. I could change everything else about the helmet, but I couldn't change the blue visor. So I thought, I'm going to play up the blue, and that's going to be my main color for the whole suit. And it really masks that limitation.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. The blue is kind of a perfect blue too. The pictures that I've seen of you wearing it, it looks like you have stepped out of a movie. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's like the feeling that I wanted, was like, I want that cinematic shot. It was kind of a funny purpose to make something instead of trying to build the cosplay that was matching something that I'd seen. I wanted to build a cosplay that was matching like a feeling or like a moment that's portrayed in film of like, what I really, really wanted was lights inside this helmet lighting up my face. So that was a perfect way to integrate electronics into this project. So
awesome. Well, I know a lot of other cosplayers kind of start in that same place where they have a helmet that they want to light up. So this is awesome. I can't wait to hear how you did this. My battery is not cooperating, but I'll show you the inside. Okay.
This is where the electronics live, and you can see the strips of lights are up here at the top, and also I've got some at the bottom.
Oh
down
yeah,
there.
I see those. Yeah,
they're kind of running all the way around, and these are RGB LEDs, so I can change the color of them, and I can tell each one, they're individually addressable, meaning I can tell each one when to turn on and when to turn off, and what color I want them to be. But for this project, I'm keeping them all on all the time, and I've tuned the color so that it kind of compensates a little bit for the blue on this visor. So I've tuned the color to be a little bit warmer, so that my face looks a little better when you're looking in the visor.
Interesting. Wow, that really lends itself to a lot of customization. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know you could do that.
hmm
Okay.
And then I also have in here a little microphone. It's this right here
Oh,
is a little microphone,
oh, okay.
and it is listening to it's listening for me to speak. And whenever I speak, these lights out here turn on.
Oh, wow.
So these are they're little flashes when I talk. So
Uh-huh.
um, I was
That's
sort of
so
thinking
neat.
through the story of this space person. I was like,
Uh-huh.
maybe when you're in space, or I was thinking this is like a planetary explorer. So she's walking around on the surface of a planet. And
Yeah,
I
wow.
thought, if she's talking to someone else, if there are people in a group, maybe you want to see who's talking. So maybe there's some external, visual for, the sound that you're hearing through your comms or whatever is coming from this person.
Yeah, wow.
So I
Oh,
just tried to, about think about this character, who she is and where she's working and under what conditions. And then that informed my weathering too. I was like, she's in a vehicle leaning against some kind of support when she's being driven around or transported. Like maybe that's where it's
yeah.
rubbing.
Oh, that's
Maybe there's
amazing.
micrometeorites hitting her here and there. So that was a really fun project where I got to sort of create my own story and my own character. And actually, this tutorial for building the helmet and adding the lights to the helmet is in the book,
Oh, awesome.
in my wearables book, and it's and the laser cutting portion actually for making all the armor.
Hmm.
It's all laser cut EVA foam. I wrote that up for Make Magazine, so that's
Oh,
in
okay.
in last year, one of last year's Make magazines.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I was earlier today I was on your website and I found the interview that you did with Norm Chan from Tested, where you
Yeah.
were talking about this. So if you are listening or watching, go find that video, go to her website, and check that out because it's a really great chance to kind of get some really good footage of all of that. It was awesome to
Oh,
watch.
yeah. That was great. And then I got a lovely photo from Norm himself, who takes just the most amazing photos, and
Oh, yes,
treasure
he
that.
does. Well, awesome. So, the helmet. If we can go back just a minute to the helmet. In the video, you were talking about the different materials that you used for that helmet. So you have foam, and you repurposed a costume helmet, but you also have paper on there as well. So it's really really
That's right.
light, which is
Yeah.
which I thought was really interesting and very cool.
Yeah, it's incredibly light and it's very comfortable too. I built up the surface of, I built up the sort of shoulder collar area of my spacesuit so that
Hmm.
this helmet actually sits on my spacesuit instead of resting on my head.
Oh,
Um, but even if I do just put this on over my head, it's so light. It's really comfortable. So the paper portion is this corrugated stuff
oh
here.
wow,
It's corrugated craft paper.
oh wow,
It's
that's amazing.
really just like cheap craft paper, but I I knew that it was an interesting texture and that it would I could make it blend in with the rest of my materials just through paint. So that was another technique or another strategy that I used for transforming this helmet was to apply a lot of texture to it. So I
Hmm.
was in my research looking at all the sci-fi spacesuits from fantasy space movies that I loved. I noticed that the ones that were really compelling to me had a lot of different textures
Hmm.
in them. And so knowing that I was going to use mostly one material, EVA foam, on this build, I knew that I wanted to incorporate a lot of different textures onto the surface of that foam to sort of mask the fact that it was all made out of the same thing. So
Yeah.
I have
Oh, that's
like this
brilliant.
sort of like line, these sort of like crossed lines, or sorry, like I don't know how to
They're like
describe that.
scored.
They're
It's
like,
like
yeah,
yeah,
parallel scored lines.
yeah,
That
yeah.
I did on my laser cutter, and then all of this I did on my laser cutter. So I developed that line pattern, this sort of hexagon pattern that looks kind of like filtering or shielding of some kind.
Yeah, that looks like
And
my
then,
wasp
yes,
material.
yeah,
Very
the
cool. Cool, cool.
hexagons. I love the
Yes,
hexagons.
yes.
And then this kind of like plated, sort of um, more, it's kind of more like interlocking plates
Hmm.
pattern. I sort of developed those different textures and applied them in different places. And then I tried to keep the coloring standard across all those different textures so they would
Hmm.
feel like
The same palette.
the
Yeah.
same material. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. I was surprised when I read that it was your own design because it looks like something that you'd see in a movie. I
Oh,
was
thank
trying to
you.
place the suit like that must be from something I haven't seen yet, but yeah,
I
it's
feel I
great.
feel like the most successful I feel about it is when I'm wearing it at a convention and someone guesses what it's from, and they say
Yeah,
like, "Oh, is that from Fallout or
yeah.
is that from Aliens?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's not, but it means so much to me that you think it is, because I that was my goal was like, can I make like this sort of convincing piece of like fantasy space gear?"
Yeah. Well, I think the answer is yes. Well, very cool. Yeah, please go check out that project, you guys. Do you, let's see what I'm looking at my notes here. If we, let's move on to the project, your current work in progress project, if that's okay. The Gedren that you are working on, which I can see right behind you. I've been staring at it this whole
Yeah,
time.
she is coming along. Yeah. So this is a pretty obscure character. She's from the 1985 Red Sonja film, which is really a unique. It's campy, but there's some great production in it. And the costume designer was the same costume designer that did the costumes for Flash Gordon.
Oh,
So,
wow.
really big, really very 80s, very over the top, elaborate. And it's just like, I saw this film when I was in high school and I just like, I'm not even sure I really understood what was going on in the film. I just fell in love with this costume. Like,
Oh,
and
awesome.
so this has been something I've wanted to do for decades. So I have kind of a really deep love and appreciation for just the aesthetic of this costume. And I think that is really powering me through this project,
Hmm.
and turning it into something way bigger than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to whip this out in a few weeks, and it's
Oh,
been a long time.
yeah. I've said that so many times. You're not alone.
I know you'll understand.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, this is the portion of the costume that I'm wearing is the body armor and these leather sleeve epaulette things. She's got. I have yet to work on the plating that goes down the side of her legs,
Hmm.
and then she has this fantastic gold drape. But
Ooh.
it's all EVA foam as a base. So I built it initially in a similar way to the way I did my spacesuit, where I
Hmm.
modeled it off my body and I made
Hmm.
it out of EVA foam on my laser cutter. But then I covered it all with Warbler um, to get that hard sort of
Oh, okay.
armor look.
Yeah.
And
It's very shiny.
it looks very
Yeah.
rigid on her. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
I got this really amazing shine on it by I wet sanded. Um, what is the name of that foam coating? Um, you know what it is? Wonderflex. No, not Wonderflex.
Warbler. Warbler? No.
It's like the paint on coating that you put on top of it. It's almost like Mod Podge, but it's thicker.
Oh, is it
Flex Bond. Flex
Flex
Bond.
Bond? It's like it's
Yeah.
flex something.
It is
Yes.
with Flex
Flex
something.
Bond.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So I did a bunch of coats of that, and then I wet sanded it, and it became really shiny. And then I put all of these gold studs on it, which took me forever, but was kind of a fun and meditative like
Uh-huh.
process. Um, and when this is all done, I also have a mask that goes with it, and her crown is back here. But she's also going to have a prop, which is her weapon. So she's the villain of the piece for sure. And she has this weapon. They never really fully explain how this weapon works, but it's this glowing green orb. And it has all these crazy gold spikes, and it's about this big. So I have
Sounds
this
so 80s.
It's so 80s. It's deliciously 80s. So this is a small
Ooh,
scale mock-up of what it
okay.
looks like. It's this
Oh, wow.
green, it's going to be like this color green, and then it'll have these gold spikes kind of wrapped around it.
Oh, wow.
But this is small. It is actually going to be this big.
Oh,
So I'm
wow.
going to
That
build
is
that whole
big.
thing at this scale. And then it needs to glow green from the
Hmm.
inside. So
Hmm.
that's a perfect application for my electronics skills. So I decided to make a custom PCB that I can suspend in the middle of the globe, and it'll radiate light on all sides. So I created this.
So, what is a PCB?
So PCB stands for printed circuit board.
Okay.
This is a milled circuit board,
Okay.
but it's basically rather than building your circuit with wires and having sort of a loose distributed circuit, you can put it all on a board, and everything is run through these traces instead of wires.
Oh,
So
okay.
it makes your circuit very compact, and it takes another level of knowledge. So I had to learn a lot to get to this point. Before building this, I had not done any circuit board design myself, so I had to learn that. And then I also was learning a new machine to create these boards, which is the Bantam PCB mill.
Okay.
And so it's like basically a tiny CNC mill that's a desktop CNC mill,
Oh, wow.
and it will mill your circuit out of this copper plated board.
Oh, my goodness.
So I designed one of these pentagons, and then and I made them connect to each other in the design. I have the circuit kind of coming in on one side and going out on another side, and that allows me to connect them all together in this dodecahedron.
Wow.
And
That's.
these
A,
little white things are all LEDs.
oh,
They're,
okay.
and they're the same kind of LED that are in my helmet here.
Oh, okay.
The same kind, but in this project, I used a strip of those LEDs. You can
Mm-hmm.
just buy them in a strip,
Mm-hmm.
already all wired together. And in this project, I bought them as separate LEDs, and I decided where to put them on my board.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and then when I plug it in, I'm going to plug it in and then I'll lift it up. It's running a sample program right now that's just going to show sort of cycling through different colors.
Oh, wow.
See that? It's kind of
Oh,
running
that's.
through in
Oh, that's
sequence.
so neat.
And then what I want to do is now that I have it put together and I have it connected to this microcontroller here, I can now program this board to tell it to show whatever light pattern I want. So in the same way that I tuned the lights on my helmet to just be a better color for my face, I'm
Yeah.
going to take that idea and apply it to this project. And I'll probably create some kind of interesting light animation. It's definitely going to be green, but I can
Yeah.
choose the color green I want it.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
and I think it would be nice to have the lights kind of pulsing around it, so it looks like it's kind of undulating or,
Yeah, like an
flowing.
organic something that's in there because it looks like it's your little mock-up looks very organic.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so neat. I am just absolutely fascinated by that whole concept of the copper plates and how the circuit. And I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
And
is very exciting.
I just, this is a place that I never thought that I would get to. I never thought that I would know anything about designing a circuit board or let alone making, 12 of them and sticking them all together and having that work in 3 dimensions. Like I never had a moment where I was like, I want to learn how to get to that point. I just followed my projects and picked up the skills as I needed them. And that was kind of easier for me to digest. I think if I had sat down and said, I want to know how to do that one day from nothing, from where I started, it just would have felt so far out there, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And I needed to get started. Like I started with this, you know, this is why I will never get rid of this.
Your sweatshirt. Yeah. That's
Because
great.
this is where I started. And I had no idea when I did this that I would, you know, be able to do this one day.
Yeah.
So,
and how long, I don't know that I've asked you this, how long has it been since your sweatshirt to today?
yeah, it's a good question. So I think it's probably been, maybe like a long time. I would say like maybe 8 years.
Okay.
You know? Yeah, because I did this back in San Francisco when I lived in San Francisco, and so for me, I haven't actually thought about that, like how long I've been doing this. And it's a big realization for me because I move through things so quickly. Like I have a bit of a reputation in my family for being like someone who like flits from one interest to another interest to another interest. Yeah. And for a long time, I thought like, oh, I'm really messing things up by doing this. But actually, I think recently I've discovered that it's, you know, a superpower that some of us have, that we can do that. And it's not a bad thing. And it just, we end up gathering a lot of skills that you wouldn't think go together. And then we can use those things in ways that are unexpected, and it's so fun. Like it's so.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's important for a lot of folks to understand as well. And going back to something that you mentioned before about the having a project, learning because there's something that you want to do for a project, and then learning how to do that instead of learning, I'm going to learn how to LED.
Yeah.
which is hard when you pick up a book and it's about that, and it starts out with the circuitry and everything, which is important, but a lot of people don't learn that way, and I think that I might be one of those people, and hearing you talk about this. So it's nice to hear that, just like everything else, there's a lot of different ways to learn, like hands-on approach, self-teaching approach, and, you know, from this is what a circuit is to complex project, that's also another different way to learn all of these things. But interesting.
I think that's a really good point. And I think that it's important. I think that's one of the reasons why it's very important to have a lot of different voices explaining how to do things. I mean, like sometimes I think like, oh, why do I need to do a tutorial about how to make an LED light up? There's so many tutorials about how to make LEDs light up. Like, what am I really going to add by making another one? But it might be that none of those tutorials can work for some people, you know, like it might be that they just need to see you doing it. They might just need to hear it come from your voice and your experience. Yeah. So I think the more people sharing their experiences and their knowledge and their failures and the things that they've learned, the better, you know, like it's just, there's so much information out there, but there's always room for more.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I also think that in my experience, there's also a lot of improvement for myself to improve my tutorials because I've learned something new about it, or, you know, I look back at some of my prior tutorials and be like, oh, I could have explained that way better. I don't really do things that way anymore.
And do you also ever find that like you have to go back to your tutorial to remember how to do something? Because I feel like I do that all the time. I'm like, how did I do that? It's been 6 months and I've done so many other things since then. Like I have to go and look it up. And then the other thing I want to say about electronics in general is, especially right now, the technology is moving so fast, and the products you can buy are progressing so fast that a book that you bought, you know, 2 years ago might not be very applicable anymore, because we might be coding in a different language now, or there might be better things available to you. So I think if someone is getting started and they're looking for resources, I personally think that online resources, if you can validate like when they were posted and if they're good links to things you can buy right now and they're well documented and well supported, that's a better resource right now than buying a book that might be out of date.
Yeah.
That being said, I don't think you can have too many books, and I have a lot of books that are old, and I still go back and refer to them. But just know that sometimes, especially with this electronic stuff, you might be reading something in a book that explains how to do something one way, and you might have to do some additional research to figure out how that works in your project now. And that's just something to be aware of. There's so many ways to get blocked in these projects.
Yeah.
And you just have to know that it's not just you. Like, it happens to everyone working in electronics. You always have to look up documentation, and you're always going to be scouring forums to find out if someone else had the same problem you have. And there's so much information out there, which is good. You just have to be prepared to navigate those kinds of roadblocks.
Yeah. Good points. Very good points. And so, Sophie, let's talk a little bit more about some of the smaller projects in the book. So, if someone is interested in checking that out, what are some of the things that they can find in the book that you have written?
So, some of the good sort of beginner projects, I would say, are there's a project in here that doesn't require any code at all.
Perfect.
Which is
for someone like me. Little baby steps.
Very simple, and it will allow you to you can take the concept from this project and apply it to a lot of other form factors, a lot of other things that you want to make, anything you want to put LEDs in, and that is these LED shoes. Let's see if there's a better picture on the front. Here we go. So basically, I took some sneakers and I sewed LEDs, and this is a very similar concept to what I did on my sweater. Okay. I just sewed some LEDs to the outside of it, and I added a battery pack, and then I just decorated the shoe however I wanted to decorate it. You could always embellish it further. But the lights end up going down the side of your sneakers, and you don't need any. Here's a quick look at the circuit diagram. So it's really just a battery connected to several LEDs, and you could take this same concept, the same circuit design, and apply it to a hat or a prop or some other piece of clothing. That going through the steps in this project will teach you some things like how to manage cable strain so that this wire doesn't get pulled out when you're walking. There are other things that you need to consider when you're putting electronics in your wearables besides just how do I make the lights light up. So this is a good one to start with.
Awesome.
If you don't want to get bogged down with code. Then there are a lot of other projects that use a specific board that I think is really great for beginners if you do want to start getting into code, and that is this board right here. It's called a Circuit Playground Express. It comes from Adafruit.
Okay.
It's about $25. And what's really great about this is it's a circuit board that has lights and sensors already built into it. So you don't have to build your circuit from scratch. You can literally plug this into your computer and start coding and programming it and telling it what you want to do without having to do any soldering or building any circuit. So it's really great because I find as someone who came to this world really from nothing, and I had to learn how to build circuits and how to program them, that can be a lot for your beginner projects.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to skip to coding so that you don't get halfway through your project and you're already exhausted from figuring out how to solder everything together, and then you have to learn how to code. It's like, it might just be too much. Skip to the coding with this.
That's great. And I'll put links to some of these things in the show notes. And again, if you're listening, hop on over to the video, because this is we can describe it. It's a little disc. It's probably the size of, what would you say? It's about like an inch and a half,
like a golf ball.
Yeah. Like a golf ball. And it's circular and sounds like something that would be a fun, you can get that maybe an instant gratification than other than without having to learn soldering and all of that. So
exactly.
Yeah. Perfect.
And just to show you like the amazing things that are on this tiny board, there's 10 RGB LEDs around this outside, which those are the same LEDs that I was using in my space helmet and in that dodecahedron I showed you, the same kind of LEDs. So if you learn how to use them on this board, essentially you know how to use them everywhere, because they work the same way.
Okay.
Then there's a microphone, so you can make this sound reactive. There's a light sensor, so you can make it light reactive.
Oh, wow.
And all of these pads, these gold colored circles around the outside, those are all capacitive sensors, or most of them are. So you can sew to them with your sewn. If you don't want to do any soldering at all, you can sew things to this and control them through the sewn circuits, like I did on my sweater. And you can also make it touch sensitive. So if you touch that circuit, you can program it to do something like turn a light on. And all of that can be done without typing code, because this board can be programmed with MakeCode, which is a visual-based coding platform. So and it runs in your browser. So you just go to their website. There's a bunch of tutorials there, and you can start dragging blocks around to say, when I touch this sensor, make the light go on, or when you detect a light, turn the lights off, and vice versa.
Wow. Or when you detect your voice, turn the light on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm learning. Yay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard. Like, a lot of times I tell people, like, oh, you should check this board out. But they're like, why?
Yeah.
Like, what am I going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Well, the programmability of it is why you would want to add something like this to your work.
I could see, so you were talking about touch. So you could have something that you touch with your hand to something else, and it could create a sound or a light or whatever. Wow. Okay. Exactly. That's very inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's lots of projects I'm thinking of right now.
Capacitive touch. And you can get that in. So what's cool is if you learn how to use that on this board, you can then go on to build your own circuit that is not this form factor. Like, say you want to touch something on your wrist and you want the light to light up on your shoulder, you could run a wire down and you could put your microcontroller, put the brain of it somewhere on your body, wherever it makes sense in your costume. But you can use the same concept that you learned from this board and buy other components that do the same thing and build your own circuit. So I think this is such a great place to start.
Yeah,
and if you wanted to jump right in, like grab this book, this is a good companion piece to get with it, because there's several projects in here that you could do with it.
That is amazing. And tell me again where we would find that.
So this board is available from Adafruit, adafruit.com.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And tell me one more time, what is it called?
It's a long name. It's called the Circuit Playground Express.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so neat. I feel like I should have done this episode maybe 2 years ago because this is kind of the exact kind of a thing that I would love to tinker with. So I'm definitely gonna check this out and just make something fun and check out your book or the tutorials that you wrote for that book. And make one of those projects, and I will show you what I've done. That's very exciting.
I can't wait. That's awesome. That would make me so happy.
Well, we are definitely 100% out of time. I always tell myself I'm going to keep this to so I made the mistake of thinking, I can make these 30 minutes. No, I can never make them 30 minutes because there's just way too much to talk about. And certainly with everything that you do, I could talk to you for such a long time. And we didn't even talk about your 3D printed dress that you've been working on that I'm obsessed with, by the way. It's
I can't
amazing.
wait to finish it. I've got a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Well, I just have to get through them.
Yeah. Well, I'll have you back on sometime when we can talk about that or whatever you happen to be working on at that time when I do get you back.
That would be awesome. Hopefully I'll have something done by then.
I'm sure you will. Well, before I let you go, can you give our listeners and viewers a tip if they are new to this process or they're new to all of this? I know we've talked about easy ways to slowly get into learning some of these things. But do you have any other a tip or something that helped you along the way?
Yeah, I would say a resource that was really, really valuable to me was the Adafruit website. So Adafruit is the company that they make the Circuit Playground Express. They make a lot of the components that I use in my work. And one reason I use their components so much is all of their products are really well documented, and they have a ton of learning resources on their website for how to build things with their components. Awesome. So specifically, check out Adafruit as a place to buy the components that you need, but also go to their learning website, which is, I believe it's learn.adafruit.com.
Okay, yeah, I think I've been there
that
before.
is the website that has thousands of tutorials. I mean, so many tutorials, and there are all different levels. There's a ton of beginner tutorials. There are more complex tutorials, and there's a lot of good ideas of what you can make with this kind of technology. So it was a huge resource for me when I was starting. It continues to be a huge resource for me. If I have an idea of something I want to build, I go there and I look to see if someone's built something similar, and then I can design my project based on that information.
Awesome. That sounds like the kind of rabbit hole that I'd love to get lost in.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, excellent. Where can we find you? Because I know that you also have tutorials and you have resources that are also really helpful. Where can we find you online to watch your work and learn from you?
So all of I've compiled everything on my own website, which is sophiewong.com. So I have some projects up there, and then I also have links to all of my social feeds, my Instagram, my Twitter, I'm pretty active on. All of that you can find at sophiewong.com.
Awesome. Well, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with me and for this amazing show and tell. It's been super informative, and I'm really inspired, and I'm going to go check out that little wafer circle.
Do it.
Circuit playground.
Wafer. It's like Oreo cookie size. That's what it is.
Well,
thank
everyone,
you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And again, we're going to talk again because we've got to talk about that dress and other things too. So this has been a lot of fun for me. So everyone, listeners, viewers, please go check out Sophie's work on all of the social medias. And definitely check out the book. It's called Wearable Tech Projects on the Hackspace website, but there's also a link, I think, on your website to that, which is where I found that. So go check that out. And yeah, that's all the time we have. And thank you again, Sophie, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening and for watching. And again, I'm Beverly from Downen Creative Studios, and we'll see you next time. Bye.